Okay. Bismillah, walhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulillah, wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in, rabbi shrah li sadri, wa yassir li amri, wa hlul uqdatan min lisani, yafqahu qawli. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Okay, so today we'll be having our Figma tutorial, inshallah, being delivered by Omar. Now, before we begin, we'll just have a short recitation.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم وإذ قال ربك للملائكة إني جاعل في الأرض خليفة قالوا أتجعل فيها من يفسد فيها ويسفك الدماء ونحن نسبح بحمدك ونقدس لك قال إني أعلم ما لا تعلمون وعلم آدم الأسماء كلها ثم عرضهم على الملائكة فقال أنبئوني بأسماء هؤلاء إن كنتم صادقين قالوا سبحانك لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا إنك أنت العليم الحكيم قال يا آدم أنبئهم بأسمائهم فلما أنبأهم بأسمائهم قال ألم أقل لكم إني أعلم غيب السماوات والأرض وأعلم ما تبدون وما كنتم تكتمون. Remember when your Lord said to the angels, I am going to place successive human authority on earth. They asked Allah, will you place in it someone who will spread corruption there and shed blood while we glorify your praise and proclaim your holiness? Allah responded, I know what you do not know. He taught Adam the names of all things, then he presented them to the angels and said, tell me the name of these things. Tell me the names of these if what you say is true. They replied, glory be to you. We have no knowledge except that you have taught us. You are truly the all-knowing, all-wise. Allah said, O Adam, inform them of their names. Then when Adam did, Allah said, did I not tell you that I know the secrets of the heavens and the earth, and I know what you reveal and what you conceal?
Okay, I'll be passing it over to Omar now, inshallah.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. So the session today, we're going to do a couple of things. First of all, Ismail will go through what Figma is, what you can use it for, what you can do with it, and then we'll go through a little demo. We'll have a UI up on the screen, and I'll take you guys through how to build something like that. And then we'll pass it over to you. There'll be another UI that you can build on your own, or if you have your own thing that you're working on, you can work on that, and then we'll walk around and help out as and when you need, inshallah.
Okay. Assalamu alaikum. So, like Omar said before, we're going to go into the session. We're going to explain what Figma is and the importance of it. Figma is an online platform as well as a software you can download. It allows users to collaborate, so whether it's with your friends or your teammates, it allows you to share coursework, slideshows, prototypes, app development, UI, UX. So pretty much it has a lot of uses. Now, where is it used? It's used in anything from big companies, small companies, startups, freelancers. It's very useful all around. Now, a lot of us, especially in design engineering, some of you may have heard, we use this quite often for our coursework. Why would we use this over PowerPoint? Figma has a lot more freedom in terms of what you can do with it. It's a lot more intuitive to use. PowerPoint has a lot of constraints. It's very limiting. For example, if you have 5 people on a PowerPoint at the same time, you can experience a lot of lag. Whereas on Figma, it's quite instantaneous. You don't really experience lag. It's quite seamless. Besides just making coursework, you can do prototypes for app, whether it's just a visual version, proof of concept. You can prototype these apps as well to make a working proof of concept by linking frames together. You can link a lot of these frames together to make a working prototype. So for example, you can make a button that when you tap it, it moves to the next frame. It's used in development of these apps in a lot of big companies. So for example, if you're applying to Google, if you're applying to a lot of app startups, Figma is a very useful skill to have, and they will put a lot of weight on that skill. Like I said, again, it's useful for collaboration. Many people can work on it at the same time. We've had upwards of 7 people on the same project at the same time and had no issues whatsoever. So pretty much that's what it's useful for.
Okay, so like I mentioned, we're now going to try and build out something similar to this. I won't go through all of it because it might take a little bit of time, but we'll go through kind of the key features and key things that you guys should know. Out of curiosity, quick show of hands, who's used Figma before or knows anything about Figma? Cool. Okay, a couple of you. That's fine. Okay, no worries. So what I'll do then, I'll go kind of pretty bare bones. So this is the thing that I prepared a bit earlier. You'll understand what this is on the left. This is just a screenshot of the UI you just saw, and then this is the version in Figma. So we have everything laid out, icons, everything. It's slightly different because I couldn't find the exact same icons, but everything important is there. So starting from the beginning of a page, this is the Figma app, by the way. You can use it on both desktop and the app version. Personally, I do prefer the app version, but to each their own. Start off by creating a new design file, like you would on like a new tab on a browser. I'm also going to change this to drafts. As Imperial students and students in general, you get access to Figma Pro. So there's no real limit on teams and pages, but in your drafts, regardless of which version you're using, free or otherwise, you can get unlimited kind of design files in there. These things I won't speak about today, but design is pretty much what you can use Figma for pretty much every time. So creating a new design file, giving it a second. Also, the Mentimeter as well. If you guys do have any questions, whack it on there. While this loads, this is kind of what you'll first be greeted with. Personally, I like to name my files pretty much immediately, otherwise I'll forget and get a bunch of untitled. So we'll call this demo for today. And then sticking on this left-hand side, we have the file, assets and things. This is more high-level assets. Don't really have to worry about this. Pages, per file, you can have multiple pages. And then layers. Layers will make a bit more sense later. It's pretty much just everything you have, every image, every text is going to be on its own layer, and you can move things about, change hierarchy, change what's in front and what's behind. So starting off then, we'll create a frame by clicking F. So that's F to create a frame, and you'll see immediately on the right-hand side, you have a bunch of pre-made frames for you. So aspect ratios that are pre-done. So depending on what you're doing, you already have these frames to work with. So you can do watch, presentations, paper, so you got A4 and things like that here. For today, because we're making a phone UI, we're going to go for this iPhone 16. And you'll see immediately we get this iPhone 16 frame in front of us. So anything we put on this frame, you'll see as well it appears in layers, will sit inside the frame, and anything outside will be outside. So even if I have a shape, say I put in a rectangle, I just press the letter R there for a rectangle. If I put it outside the frame, it will sit outside. If I bring it in and move it halfway, you see that it's still inside the frame. So a bit more on that later in terms of making rectangles and shapes and things, but that's kind of the basics of frames. So once you've got one, the next thing that I like to do is to create a layout. You can find different guides for layout grids and things. I just know them from the hours that I've spent on this, too many to be honest, but that's neither here nor there. On the right, you also have a bunch of important information, position being a big one. You'll see a bit later when it comes to moving things about. This is fairly important and fairly intuitive. Layout as well, and appearance. Corner radius as well is going to be quite important. That's just how rounded the corners are. Again, this is more important later on when you have stuff inside the frame, not necessarily for the frame itself. Fill is just fill what color the frame is. Stroke is a border around the frame. Effects, you can do drop shadows and things. Again, this is more important a little bit later. But layout guide is really what is crucial for the moment. And we'll start off by creating one of those. So you'll see immediately we get a grid. We don't really want a grid. What we want is columns. And then we'll put 4 columns here. Color can be whatever you want. And then we want a 20 margin. So that's 20 pixels. And then a gutter of 16. So what a margin is, obviously, is just the space from the edge of the screen to the first kind of blocks either side, and the gutter is the space between each block. Once we have this, we can kind of design it and change it how we want. To toggle it on and off, either you can click the frame, and then with this little eye icon, then you can toggle it on and off as you want. Or you can click Alt-Shift-4, I think. Control-Alt-Shift-4, I think. Yeah, sorry, Control-Shift-4. And that toggles it from visible to hidden. So once that's set up, what I like to do, especially if you're working with something that you already know, as in you know what icons you're going to use to create a new frame. So I've just clicked F again, and I'm just going to drag it roughly to the height of what we're working with. And this will become my assets frame. This is where I'll keep all of my text styles, all of my colors, and all of my icons. And we can create a text style just by clicking T. Clicking T allows us to then create a text box, either of fixed height and width, fixed width, but automatic height, so it will change depending on what text you write, or automatic width, where it's basically just one long line of text. Of those three, the best one to use is definitely fixed height, especially when you don't know what you're going to write, and you're just writing kind of anything to kind of keep things going. And then once you know exactly what you're doing, and once the text is there and ready, then you might be able to add the fixed width, fixed height. And then fixed width is really only useful if you have one, maybe two words. So say, for example, in a navigation bar, where you have maybe the home and then an about page or whatever, those individual words you can do as auto width. So being here now, we can create our first text style, which is heading. We'll do a heading 1. And then we can describe it however we want. We'll make it 28 pixels big and then have it be semi-bold. But just writing that, unfortunately, doesn't do it automatically. So selecting all of that, how you normally select stuff, we can change the font down here in this typography section on the right, and we'll change it to Open Sans. And then change the size to 28, which is not an automatic size, so I'm going to have to write it down. 28. And then change the boldness to semi-bold. Having done that, we can turn that into an actual heading that we can then apply to whatever we want to apply it to by clicking these 4 dots here and then bringing our mouse to add, create style. And that will lock it as a style, and then we can call it what we want, and that being heading 1. And then we've created our style like that. So if I click off, now we have our style represented here, and we can do that for colors, for text, for pretty much whatever you want. Later I'll mention design systems, which is fairly important. It's like an advanced Figma tool and technique. You can look into that in your own time. But yeah, that's super useful. So creating heading 1, that's all good. And then we can create other text styles as we want to, body and things like that. But that's kind of the very, very rough basics in terms of what you need to know for file setup. Now we can look into actually creating something that looks somewhat good. So this is basically, I've done the exact same thing. I brought in a reference and then created my heading 1, a body, and a caption. Stated my colors, brought in my icons, and then created this nav bar down here. 2 things to mention here. The icons, unfortunately, I did not create myself. I'm a decent designer, but that takes too long. What's really good about Figma is the big community that you have. Pretty much anything and everything you need, you can find on a community file. So literally look into the community by going home. You have it here. Anything and everything you want. So Ismail, give me an example. What do you need? Icons, cool. We can do icons. Literally look up icons here. Then we have a bunch of icons that we can use. Most of these are free of charge. Copyright stuff, I'll be honest, I'm not too sure. But for general prototyping and stuff you guys are going to use it for, in your coursework and things like that, you'll be fine. The one I like personally is this 1,700 plus icon pack. Pretty much find everything I need here in some capacity. And you can see, if I zoom in, just a bunch of icons that I can use. Whatever you want should be there. Another thing to mention are these navigation stuff. So the camera, island, and the gesture bar. It's very useful to have something like that when you're designing, because it's something that a lot of us forget about. And by a lot of us, I mean me. So we have this iPhone 16, same iPhone we use for our frame. When it loads, you'll see just has a bunch of these things ready for us to use, and we can just copy and paste them and then design with them. Is it? Cool. Perfect. Loads. Too many to count, to be honest, in terms of how many icon packs there are. Yeah, so just look up those icon packs on community and then just find icons that you like. So if you don't like a specific style, you'll probably find somewhere someone's made something that you do. So these are really useful. Icons are really useful. And you can find other stuff as well, images, stuff like this. And you can drag and drop them in from Google. So that being said, let's start by building something similar to this. So same as last time, we'll go press F to create our frame. And then we'll go iPhone 16. There we go. And then we'll make our layout. And then that's columns, 4, margin 20, gutter 16. So from here, then we can lift in these navigation things. So all I've done there is I've selected both of them by clicking them. Shift to select multiple things. I'm holding Shift down at the moment, by the way. And then I can click Alt while hovering on pretty much anywhere, and then drag it out as I want to. Alt basically just copies it, and then I can move it around both of them. Even when I'm not clicking Shift, provided I've pressed Alt, they will copy, and then Shift just makes sure they copy either vertically or horizontally, and they kind of snap to those planes. So we have this as our skeleton, if you want to call it that. Now we can start putting stuff in. So what do we want to start with? Does anyone want to let me know? Anything we're interested for? Tahmid, where do you want to start with this UI? With the navbar, yeah? The thing down here? Perfect. So we'll start with that. What do you see? You see, what, 5 icons? So we go into our icons that we've already selected or that we need. So we go find them, bring them in. We have our home here, going left to right. We have file here. We have the plus here. And then we have the image and the person. Cool. We have all of these and we've kind of mixed and matched them. They're not very straight, so we can select all of them, how you normally select stuff, and then Shift A turns this into an auto layout. So hang on, I've created 2 auto layouts there. Turns into an auto layout, which is really useful when it comes to, first of all, making sure everything's uniform. Do we have another question? What are the columns for? Yeah, literally just for guidelines. So making sure everything's aligned. It makes life easier as well later when you come to develop stuff, similar with auto layout. These are just tools for you guys to make sure everything's aligned and straight, so that when it comes to making stuff, your life's a bit easier. Easier on the eyes as well. Uniformity is good. So yeah, they are something useful. Do we have another question? Yes, you can. Actually, I don't think you can. Never mind. You do have to be online for most things. There might be a setting in Pro that lets you work offline, but in general, try and be online where you can. I think that's all the questions for now. Yeah, perfect. Okay, wicked. So back to here then. We've turned this into an auto layout, and you'll see here we have frame. It's called it frame. The first auto layout you make is going to be frame 1, second frame 2, so on and so forth. But it's really useful for yourselves and for myself to name these. So this is going to be our navbar. So we can call it navbar. And we have all of our icons inside. So here now, to get from here to here, there are a couple of things that we notice. At the moment, these icons are constrained to just the icon. But in the actual thing, we have these backgrounds, right? These circles that go around that are a lot bigger than the icon itself. So to get those, we can actually put these icons in their own auto layout again. So we can Shift A for each one. We'll call that add, and so on and so forth. So Shift A. Don't do what I'm doing. Make sure you name everything. Shift A. And then we can, from there, now that these are in their own auto layout, we can make it bigger. Another question. Would you recommend AI to vibe code? If so, what models? AI is very good. If you can't code at all, then try. But there should be some level of back and forth. Don't just ask it to do everything for you. From what I've heard, the better the model, the better the results. So Claude is very good. I think Cursor has just released a new model that's also quite good. But yeah, play around with it. Like, these tools are really, really useful and they're not going anywhere. So it's worth kind of having a play. Cool. How do you make sure stuff stays aligned when you resize it? So we've aligned it in auto layout here. So it will automatically align itself. And that's actually a good point that I forgot to mention. Looking at this properties tab on the right, we have a bunch of these layout settings. So at the moment, this is laid out to a row, and that row is left aligned. So if I make this a bit bigger, you can see it's center and left aligned. If I make it top left, then the items move top left. Make it bottom right, bottom left, and center. If I double click on this align center, then what it'll do is it'll spread everything out. And that gap will be automatic so that everything is, so that the two edgemost pieces are all the way on the right, and then it automatically spaces them out evenly. This can be useful in certain cases, it can be not useful in others. For this example, we want them to be in the middle. And then our gap here, I think ended up being 2, if I'm not mistaken. The reason being, we're gonna make these big and make sure that they are the size that they would be regardless of if they have been highlighted or not. So we'll start off with the middle one. I believe we can fix the ratios by clicking this. The dimensions then will stay fixed. So if we 3 by 2 will stay 3 by 2 regardless of how big you make it. I think these were 56 each. And then again, we have that center. We'll then also scroll down and fill this with the color blue that we have from our colors earlier. One thing you'll notice when you change colors in Figma is you'll have all the colors that are on the page ready for you here. And also if you go libraries and you've done the variables and you've made the color styles already, they'll also appear here. I was silly and forgot to do that, but that is there for you as well. These ones, that one is blue. So we want to go here, make sure we're centered, and then we'll come down to fill, and then make sure this is filled in with blue. The issue is, this is a square, we want a circle, and what we can do then is come to corner radius, and just slide the radius slider all the way. Doesn't matter. Once you made the circle, you can keep going, but 41 I think is enough. And then crucially then, the color on here is not meant to be black, it's meant to be white. So we're going to change it to white again by coming to section color. Make sure we're selecting the plus. If we're in add, which is the frame, it'll think about the color of the frame, not necessarily about the color of the thing inside it. So make sure you're going to the thing that you want to change and then changing it from there. So we've changed that to white. And then we can pretty much do the same thing for everything to make sure we have the same sizes, making sure that we're selected there, and then that's centered, and then same again here. With most things with Figma, you can multi-select and do multiple things at the same time. Frame is not like that, unfortunately. Frame is very much, you have to do things one by one for each individual frame. Otherwise, it will think you're trying to group things together in the same frame, and that is not the case. So the last one we want to do is here, and then we want to go to this, 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 and then this. And then we want to fill the background in, so we want that to be black. So we've selected the navbar frame from earlier, and we've come down to fill, and we've turned it from white to that black color. Now one thing you notice is the icons that we had earlier are now no longer there because they are still black. So we want to, here we can select all of them. And what you'll see is section colors. So if you've selected multiple things, the colors in those sections will be labeled as section colors. And from there, we can change all of them of the same color at the same time. So we can change those all to white, and they all appear as white there. So the next thing to do, let me just double check, is, okay, hang on, that width is 304. We can change the width and the height to what they should be, 304 and 72, like that. And then to get these rounded corners, Mustafa, how do we get rounded corners? Yeah. We can drag all the way to make sure that we're all the way around. You don't necessarily have to do this for everything. You'll see here, for example, we don't have these kind of pill shapes, but whatever you need them for. Now, crucially, we're missing one more thing. One thing I forgot to do. Can anyone see what that is? On this nav bar, what's different? Ismail? The white circle. Very good. So that white circle, we can come and we can change by going to fill on that frame. It's already white. And then changing the corner radius, going all the way around, and then coming here and changing this to the black that we want. And just like that, we have our nav bar. One more thing to do is to turn this into a component. So when you come to design things, you're going to have things that are the same. Nav bars, if you're doing a website, for example, the footer will be the same. Maybe you might have a sign-up section. That will always stay the same. But when you have multiple pages, changing them in each individual page is going to get annoying. So what you can do to prevent that is to create them as components. You make them once, and then once you've changed the component, everything else changes. You can change the children individually, and changing the children will not affect other children, but by changing the parent, you change everything. So it makes life a lot easier. If I want to change this, the middle icon to red, for example, instead of blue, I can do that once in the parent, and then every page I have that on will then change. So we can create that. We can create a component by doing it two ways, either coming down here to plugins and looking up component, create component, then clicking create component, or by just doing the shortcut straight away, which is Control-Alt-K. Figma using shortcuts is very, very useful, and we'll get a shortcuts kind of page for you guys, and probably put it on STEMM, or whoever wants it can kind of let us know and we'll get it to you. But yeah, learn your shortcuts, they're very, very useful. Alt is also a very, very big shortcut. By clicking on something and then holding Alt, you can see its position relative to other things. So by moving my mouse, I can see, cool. By holding down Alt right now, the nav bar I made just now is 86 away, pixels, whatever units you're using, vertically, and 40 indented from the one on the top. When it comes to spacing things later, this is going to be very useful. Of all the things in Figma, this is probably the most useful thing that you're going to use the most. Spacing things out relative to each other is a big part of design. So that being done, I'll probably do one or two more things. This whole thing, yeah? Brilliant. Cool. Okay. So we can do this multiple ways. We'll start off with these individual kind of things you can click, for lack of a better word. We want to always be thinking about how can we break this thing up. So if you have either a design that you're copying off like this, or something in your own kind of sketches, how can we break it up into its simplest forms? And also, how can we get it into an auto layout? Because when it comes to developing later, auto layouts are very, very similar to Flexbox. I don't know if anybody's used HTML, CSS. They work essentially the same way. So by thinking about it that way, when you come to develop, either you or using Figma developer mode directly, it makes life 10 times easier. So we'll start off with these little pills here. And so we'll bring this over here as a reference. Oh, hang on. And then, cool. We'll delete this. And we'll have that there. Actually, no, we'll make a new frame. Actually, we'll just bring it out here. Cool. So we have this here. The first thing we want to do is, like I said, break it up. So what do we want to start with? What do you think we should start with here? Tahmid. Of icon, text, and this little thing here, which one do you want to begin with? Text here, the middle one, yeah? Cool. So we want to start with this text. We'll start off with the text. Click T. And then with T, we have final UI presentation. Cool. Final UI presentation. In an example like this, you can use auto width. This specifically, the width will be fixed for the reasons you'll see in a minute. And we can change then our settings from here. For now, we'll keep it white because the background is black, so you'll be able to see it if I change it. And then we can also change the text style. So when you automatically write text, it'll kind of do it willy-nilly. It'll kind of follow somewhat of a fixed type. But again, we want to make sure everything's as uniform as possible, as common as possible for when changing things. And if anything we need to change, it makes life 10 times easier. So to do that, we will come here. And then automatically goes into text styles, and we can change it to body. And that fixes it. And if we change the body style later, so if we want to come over here, this, I've just clicked away here. I'm not clicking on anything, not selecting anything, sorry. We can come into body, click these little setting icons and then change what we want to change, and it will change it globally. And again, we can move from final UI presentation, again, Alt-Shift to bring it down slightly, and then we can check the spacing. I think I want it to be 8. Then we can change this from our body text by clicking it again to caption. We can also unlink it and change it. If you want to make it bolder slightly, for example, we can do that and then change that to caption. How many gigabytes is this going to be, Mustafa? 15. God, wow, original. Right, cool, 15 gigabytes. And then we have that there. So these two are together, they're linked. So we're gonna turn these into an auto layout themselves. And then we can create this little icon here. And to do that, literally the same as earlier, the same as we did here. Creating a picture, bringing an icon in, layout around it, and then from there, and then creating it from there. So I'm not gonna repeat it for time. We'll bring this down. Shifting again, cool. And then same here, we already have our icon, copying it from the component, and then just bringing it down. We can select all 3 of these and turn these into their own auto layout. What's the difference between hug and fill? Okay, so good question actually. Hug normally will refer to the outermost frame. And if you're hugging your components, the width will stay fixed to those components, right? So if I increase this width, it's no longer hug because it's not matching the width of the components, right? And if it's fill, that will normally refer to a child element inside the frame, and then that will just have the width of that thing fill the length of the container. So if I'm hugging here, the parent is going to shrink to the size of the children, and then if I'm filling, then the children will expand to the maximum available space they have within the parent. If that makes sense. So from here, once we've created all of these, same idea. We're in auto layout. We can create the fill. It's white already. We can change this text. Come down here, selection colors, change it to black, and then we can make it a bit bigger. So we want it a little bit bigger, and again a bit bigger there. So from here, again, we want to make sure everything's aligned in the middle, and there we go. Now we have that little section. You can adjust heights and stuff like that, but that's kind of the basics of it. I'm conscious of time, and I think that's pretty much a lot of the basics that you kind of need to get started. Is there anything else from this UI that people want me to go with or explain before I leave it to you guys for a little bit to have a play? The search bar, yeah? Cool, perfect. The search bar is very, very similar. If we have a look here, oh, hang on, whoops, it's the wrong button. There we go. If we bring it over here, just have a look. We can break the search bar down into a few things. The search bar is the icon here for on the left, the search thingy itself, the search word, and then the filter, or whatever we call it, thing on the far right, right? And then looking at these, we can group them. So the icon and search can get grouped together, and then this thing is in its own thing as well, right? And then the outer lining is just the same thing. So it's an auto layout that we've done, and instead of doing a fill on the auto layout to fill the color inside, right? So we can change this to kind of demonstrate. Instead of making it fill that way, we've not done that. We have done a stroke instead. So we've done an outline around it, right? And then it's the same exact idea. One thing to mention though that is well noticed is, I don't know if anyone picked up on it earlier, but changing the alignment to expand it all the way around, right? So where earlier in the nav bar, what we did was have everything be center-centered, right? And then we define explicitly the gap between each thing. In the search, we don't want that. We want it to just push out to each end, right? And to do that, instead of having it like this, right? Right now it's done that because we can explicitly state the gap now. The gap will state what we want it to be. If we double click in the middle, it expands it to fill the space it has. So same idea, we're just breaking things down into their core groups, if you want to call them that. Auto layout, auto layout, auto layout, and then aligning and shifting how we want them, basically, if that makes sense. Cool, amazing. So, anything else that people want me to go through before I give you guys some time to play around on your own? Animations come later, so Ismail will go through this a little bit later. That comes for prototyping. So when it comes to prototyping, I'll kind of touch on it now really quickly. We have design here, and we have prototype. Prototype allows us to do exactly what it says on the tin, right? Prototype page changes, and we can do that by, for example, let's say I want folder. When I click folder, I want it to come to this page here, right? So I can hover over folder, click on this plus, and then bring this and drag it here, right? And then we can change how that works and how that animates, and I'll leave Ismail to do a lot of that. And then we can demo that over here by pressing this. This basically presents the design as we see it. And then, yeah, from there, you can literally build out pretty much every interaction. And this rabbit hole goes quite deep. So you can do a lot with prototype and animation. So there we go, perfect. So if I click on folder now, then it will change to my page. And then you can do stuff so that it clicks back and out. But I'll let Ismail kind of do that. I won't steal his thunder too much. But yeah, so that's animations. Shortcuts, we should know. Alt, definitely, for spacing between things. So clicking on it, I can see, cool, I'm 40 from here, I'm 24 from here, 24 from here. Shift A to create an auto layout. Control Shift 4 to toggle those layout grids that we saw earlier. And that's pretty much all of them. Alt and Shift to kind of copy things and make sure they're aligned vertically and things. But those are the four that I find myself going back to the most. But everyone's slightly different. So you'll discover things, and I'm still figuring things out. And you'll discover a lot of them by accident. So those are ones that I think are the best. But yeah, have a play. You can kind of figure them out from there. Figma is very, very broad. There's a lot you can do with it. The stuff I've said scratches the surface. There's loads and loads of plugins that you can add, and nowadays, 4 or 5 years ago, it wasn't as integrated, but it's pretty much become industry standard. And because it's industry standard, you can plug it in with a lot more than you'd expect. I wouldn't be surprised if there's a way to transfer Figma to Canva and Canva to Figma directly. Truth be told, I don't know if there is, but I wouldn't be surprised. Figma is very, very useful and very, very powerful. Look it up in a nice way. Like I'm out my depth on this question, really and truly. So have a look. There should be something somewhere for whatever you need it for. Yes, anything. Post a presentation. We're using it for a report for one of our modules. I've done my portfolio on here. I've designed my portfolio website on Figma. Posters and presentations are literally perfect for Figma. Interactiveness that comes with the prototype stuff. In terms of designing interactions, that's slightly different. You're going to have to look up and have a play with that. But the core of it, play around, because Figma and these tools and getting things to be interactive and feel good is just about playing around. So when I mentioned creating that prototype, I'll go back here, we can adjust how we want it to jump from one page to another. So either it's on tap and it instantly flicks and becomes this new page, or we can have it animate a bit, smart animate in this case. And I think there'll be ways to kind of make sure things are a bit more tailored to you. But when it comes to development, that's a bit more, obviously way more tailored when you come to development. So I hope that question was answered. I don't know if Figma is the best place to design merch necessarily. There might be better softwares. You can try, to be honest. But yeah, Figma, like you can. But if you're doing merch, I'd say go more specific into some merch softwares. How do you do fill/hug? So that comes to the auto layout stuff. So once you've created an auto layout, once you've created this frame, then you can come into dimensions. So on this right properties panel, and then under width, you have these fill and hug options. Same for height, you have these fill and hug options. And then from there, you can kind of change and adjust as you want. Any any pleasant surprises? Always for both. Like Figma, when you're first learning, you can get a bunch of unexpected things. That's why, again, I'm conscious of time. It's going to give you guys some time to play. We'll walk around and help out where needed because things can happen unexpectedly. For example, I'll give you guys. I've done control and then backslash before, and that's gotten rid of everything, and that caused quite the panic. So figuring stuff out that way is part of the process. In terms of any pleasant surprises, you get a bunch of things, especially now as Figma's, like I said, becoming more mainstream. The interactions and the plugins that you can use with Figma, like it's just getting more and more interesting, and so you can do more and more with it. So there is that. I hope I answered that question. So here's an example UI, very similar to kind of the last one in terms of complexity. You can get pictures from Google, so literally Google Images, nice picture of beach place. Put it in, rounded corners here. You can auto layout this. Just think about how can I break this down? How can I turn this into an auto layout? So if you guys have Figma on your laptops, go ahead, kind of start. We can walk around. Any questions, please ask. And if you don't, we have laptops that people can use. You can use my laptop if you want. Yeah. Okay, right, we're going to get back into things now. I hope that was useful. I hope people had a play around, figured out some new things, learned some new things. But yeah, so that was that section. You've had a play around with Figma. Keep playing around. The more you play, the more you learn. And the more you learn, the easier it becomes. And the more you can then use it for, because the more tools you'll have. That being said, we didn't mention everything. Figma, like I said, is very, very expansive. And you can do a lot with it. So developer mode is quite new. It literally allows you to turn your Figma designs into working apps, functioning websites directly in Figma. Like I said, this is fairly new. When I used it, when it was even newer a couple of years ago, it was not very good at all. You were better off kind of hard coding everything. But nowadays, things are getting better. Design systems as well is something like an advanced Figma thing that I only learned about a couple of months ago. But it's very useful when you come to designing apps, because you basically do what we did earlier with styles for text and colors, but for everything and in a more fundamental way. There's things in Figma called variables, and you can set variables and all of that stuff. So if you're looking to use Figma for a more professional context, look into design systems. Figma themselves have a bunch of really, really useful tutorials that you can use. So look at those. And then mockups, Ismail is actually going to go through now. Because I forgot to put them on. But they are very, very useful and allows you to prototype Figma, to prototype apps and stuff in Figma, not functioning prototypes, but visually functioning prototypes, if that makes sense. So I'll let him explain it. He'll do a better job than I do.
Right, so just to reiterate, I'm going to go over some examples of Figma that we've done in the past. Omar mentioned we can use it for portfolios, we can use it for presentations, we can use it for prototypes of apps that don't actually function, but they're very good for presentations. So before I go into the app one, I'm going to show you portfolio. So in the past, I've used this for my portfolio. So if you just make any frame like you have in the past, you can make them any size, whack any text on there, any images as you have with the UI UX, and you can use it to make a very visually pleasing portfolio to apply to industries, companies. This is my portfolio. It's an example of mine. So the app I'm going to show you, I did 2 years ago with a team of 4. It's called Grubhub. It's this one over here. So when you've made your UI, the UI for your app, what you usually do in the process of that is you make multiple frames which show different versions of the page. So for example, over here, if I just go to design, this is going to look quite daunting. Don't get put off by this. But say, for example, we've got a home screen over here. I'll explain why it's really long before in a second. But we had a home screen. We had a friends-only version of the home. So pretty much what we did is we just copied and pasted the frame and removed the posts that weren't part of that. So Grubhub itself, it's a social media app which we designed, like I said, 2-3 years ago. And this is a working prototype, so I'll actually show you that now. So when you click prototype, it brings you up this screen. And just to demonstrate, this is a prototype where you can sort of scroll through it. You're introduced to the app. If I just get through this. So you're actually able to scroll through this. You're able to post. You're able to go to your chat. Say, for example, Maria is asking to go to Pilates. You've got a little plus sign to send some other messages. So this is actually relatively straightforward. It can look complicated, but Omar touched on it earlier as to how you do create these prototypes. Is on the top right over here, we have design and we have prototype. So when you want to build a working prototype, you go from design, you click prototype, and let's take this frame, for example, here. This is exactly the same as the UI you had earlier when Omar was doing his demonstration. The only thing is we've got a different screen here. So here we've got a little game that the user will be playing, and I want to animate it to go from this screen to this one when the user clicks skip. So we have a little object here, the skip button. When you make any shape and insert it into a frame and you switch to the prototype mode, every single object will have these little dots around it when you hover over it. And what we'll do is we'll click the little circle on the side here and drag it to our next frame. And what this does is it now allows us to make a connection between these two frames. And when you make that connection, it'll come up with this little screen over here that you now select your interaction. So we've selected on tap, navigate to the next page. So the trigger is on the tap. You have a bunch of different triggers. You've got drag, you've got whilst hovering, you've got clicking. But here we want trigger, we want the tap. So when you click tap, it will navigate to this screen here. And the animation is instant. So there's no particular animation here. If we go to the app itself, so just to see what that interaction looks like, over here, we go to this. This is the screen we had before. When I click the skip button, it'll move straight to the next screen. Yeah? So that's a very basic example of how to create an interaction that you can use in your presentation. We did the same thing for everything else. It's the exact same process of dragging to the next frame. We did that for every single one, so one of these icons in the nav bar. We did the exact same thing for this shape here, and the same thing for this shape here. So again, just to show you, if I were to go to these icons on the home page, over here, if I want to see what happens when I click this button here, I've got the button selected, I've got the interaction, I've dragged from the small little circle on the side here, all the way to the frame where I want it to take us to, right? So it's the same exact thing. Other types of interactions, you've got swiping or dragging. So say, for example, if I want to go back to my home page, click over here. If I want to go to the next page, so I'm on the home page that just shows all the posts right now. If I want to go to friends only, I can drag to the side. This is following. If I want to go from following to friends only, I can drag again. It's the exact same process of if I go again here. So these little arrows get overwhelming, but it's fine. So we're on prototype. This massive frame here, I've seen this little circle on the side. I've dragged it to the next page. And when I was choosing the interaction, I clicked on drag. Instead of on tap like the previous one, I've clicked on drag. And what this does is it allows me, so as the name says, on the drag, I can choose the direction of the drag. It shifts the screen to the next frame. Someone was interested in animations earlier. Animations is very straightforward as well. You're able to click animate matching layers. So it's a very basic form of animation. You don't actually click one icon and then animate it to another position. But when you click Smart Animate, what Figma does for you is it takes the frame before, the frame afterwards, and anything similar, it'll move between them, right? It'll just move the similar icon or the similar piece of text to match in the next frame. So I'll just see if I can find an example of that. Okay, this is an example of what I use to do Smart Animate. So this little plus sign here, as you can see, it has a little animation there. So what I did for this is I had this same frame, I copied and pasted it, and you see this little shape of a speech bubble here. I put that in its final form on the last page, but I'm in the in-between frame, I made a smaller version of it, and on the initial frame, I made it really small. So when I did the interaction and clicked Smart Animate, it actually expanded it in between. Another example is, so an example of this is over here. So in the sign-up page, I've got an example of Smart Animate. So when on the sign-up page, which is over here. I wanted to, for demonstration purposes, for when I was presenting this, I wanted to show that this age select here is a slider. So when in reality on this app, you'd be able to slide from one number to the other. So what I did here is I made a duplicate of the frame in between, and then I had my final frame. I had the final number, I had the in-between number, and I had the initial number. I created the interaction, so when I click the frame, there's a little circle here, dragged it over here, and it comes up with on tap. And then I clicked Smart Animate. I did on tap because I'm not actually trying to make it slidable. Again, this is just for presentation purposes. This is not a fully working app. So it was just on tap, so when I clicked it in the presentation, the people could see that this is what's meant to happen. So when I click Smart Animate, it moved to this slide. And then in this interaction, because I didn't want to double tap to get to my final number in my presentation, on this interaction, I just put it after a delay, right? So what it would then do in the final thing is when I click, there we go, you get this little animation. Things like this, people think sometimes it's quite small, but especially for your presentation, details like this do matter sometimes. They can make the difference from a very clunky app to something that's a bit more smooth. We had the same sort of thing multiple times in our app. Smart Animate can be used just to make text sort of appear instead of just being put on the screen. It makes the sort of interaction a bit softer. That's the main sort of prototyping system you need to understand. Earlier, I mentioned that may be quite confusing, why this screen is really long. So some of you may have been wondering before is how do I make my app scrollable, right? To do that, the frame you have will initially start as a normal size frame here. What you can do just by clicking and dragging is you can change the size of the frame here like that to whichever length you need. And another question someone might have is the navigation bar, how does that stay at the bottom? As you can see here, if I go back to the app itself, the navigation bar stays at the bottom, right? If I didn't click a certain setting, this would just move with the rest of the screen. So to do this, when you want to go to your nav bar, place it at the bottom of your frame and select your nav bar as a whole. Make sure this is all grouped. It's one large selection. And when you're on prototype, when you click the nav bar, it'll have interactions on the side here, and it'll have scroll behavior. When you go to scroll behavior, you want to click this and click fixed stay in place. And what this does is it fixes the navigation bar to the bottom of the screen. So again, when we're over here and we scroll, it stays at the bottom. And this means we can continue to have our interactions available to us in the prototype. So that's the basics of how to get your app off the ground in terms of a prototype. Like I said before, this can be daunting, but it is genuinely just taking a single UI UX frame that Omar made before, having a second one with a slight difference, and then just making the interaction between them. Since the animations are for presentation pitch purposes only, how do you actually code them to work? So personally, I'm not much of a coder. I prefer to sit in the design side of things. Would you be able to answer that? Omar will be able to answer that question for you.
So I was mentioning with Figma Developer, this is a tool that you can use. I haven't played with it as much, but this is something you could potentially play with. But how do you actually code them? So depends on what you're making, to be honest. Something like a website, HTML, CSS, Java, and nowadays as well you can use packages like Next.js, which are quite useful. It's just a case of playing around with them, and by doing those auto layout things and making sure that things are designed in a way that is code friendly, it'll make your life when it comes to coding really useful. In a second, you'll see in one of our slides we have some resources that you can use. YouTube is a very, very, very useful resource for both learning about design stuff and learning about development stuff. So you watch your tutorials, try things out, have a play, and trust me, you guys will pick up a lot quicker than you realize.
In terms of auto layout, so when we actually made this 2-3 years ago, we weren't very much aware of auto layout at the time. So this actually made things a little bit more difficult. Not having auto layout, I would have to manually sort of position things so they were aligned. Auto layout just cuts that out of the process. It makes things a lot more easier. You don't have to use auto layout, but as Omar was teaching it to you before, it's something that's very useful to get used to. It might be confusing initially, but again, it will be very useful. What was the question? How do you have a sideways scroll? Do you mean from home screen to other home screen? So, from my understanding, draggable stuff from the side. It's pretty much the same thing as before. Again, it's all these interactions from one side to another. If you want to scroll to the side, it's literally the exact same process of this, but sideways. You would just drag out the screen to the side instead of downwards. So you'd click on it, you drag it to the side, and you'd fix anything you want in place. So for example, some apps have instead of a navigation bar at the bottom, if you're on an iPad, you might have a sort of navigation bar on the side. You'd click on that and you'd say fix in place. Anything else would be scrollable. So again, it's the exact same interaction, just sideways. Is that okay? I think that's pretty much everything for app prototyping. Another useful tool if you're trying to present an app is so for example, if you want to make a mock-up, if you want to demonstrate what an app could look like on a phone, some people struggle with Photoshop or Illustrator. So I'll show you a very useful plugin on Figma that you can use instead. So if you look to the top left of your screen here, you'll see the little F, the little Figma symbol, little icon. If you click the drop down over here and go to the bottom, you'll see plugins. And if you go to manage plugins, I want you guys to search up iMockup. I've already got it over here, so just search up iMockup. And make sure you've got that saved to your plugins. Export to Figma. And what you'll notice is once you've clicked this plugin, it'll come up with this little screen over here. And depending on which phone you're designing for, or if there's a particular phone you'd prefer to demonstrate on, you can scroll down. So I will choose iPhone probably 15 Pro Max. Yeah, we'll go for iPhone 15 Pro Max. So we've got little icons here, and you can save these images on your frame as images. So if I right-click a frame at the top, you can say, for example, you can copy and paste it as an image. You can export it as an image from the side as well. And once you've got that image saved and you open your plugin, you just want to drag and drop the image into the side over here. And once I do that, I now have a mock-up of my app in any sort of position I can imagine, on any sort of phone. I can imagine iPhone 11 if you want. Google Pixel 4. There's a lot of different phones on here. You've even got iPads. Now, obviously, my UI is not designed for an iPad, so it does distort the image. So make sure you do choose something you've designed for. So again, I'll go to a Pro Max device. And once I've done that, I'll click Export to Figma, and it will give me the image over here. And this is very useful, again, for portfolios. So something cool that I actually did for my portfolio is I got that image and I did that for every single one of my screens, and I copied and pasted it multiple times. And I created this little screen over here for presenting. This is what the iMockup allows you to do. Some people struggle, like I said, with Photoshop and Illustrator. So if you guys do want to present your apps, I'd suggest iMockup for your presentations. Any other questions? At what point do you start imagining Figma frames during daily phone laptop use? After doing an app like this for days on end, you start to notice the interactions on your phone. So actually one really useful thing is whenever you're on your phone, just sort of take note of the interactions on the phone, the navigation bar, the scrolling, and think about how you can animate between them. Amr talked about getting a reference earlier for your UI UX design. It's very good to have a reference or a baseline reference. We actually used Instagram for this. So I was on Instagram a lot, just imagining the Figma frames and scrolling interactions on there. Anything else?
Yeah, perfect. Yeah, so last things were kind of resources you can use. The Hans is really good for example UIs. Instagram is good, yes, but you can procrastinate pretty easily. It's pretty hard to procrastinate on Behance, to be honest. But Figma website as well has a bunch of stuff you can use. These are actual links that I don't know if these guys have access to these slides.
We could share the links.
Wicked. I'll change Flux Academy as well to some shortcuts that you guys can use. That's just a YouTube channel. Again, YouTube's very useful. But yeah, those are probably the big three in terms of useful resources when it comes to Figma.
Okay.
Perfect.
Okay, thank you everyone for coming, and Jazakallah khair to both of our presenters here. Okay, now just a few more announcements. We've got the ELM Science Fair. If you're interested in helping out with this, sign up. It's on Saturday, inshaAllah, so there's not a lot of time if you are interested in it. If you are interested in coming along, that's also fine as well. If you've got like younger siblings, bring them along. I've got brothers who should be coming as well, inshaAllah. So do sign up for that. Also, if you do sign up for the morning, please don't come for later on in the day. We've got too many sign-ups for later on. Okay, and I'd also like to announce that we have a YouTube channel now. And our Python tutorial, this is the QR code for it, if you'd like to scan it and watch it, I guess. Now, this tutorial, the Figma tutorial, will be posted on it as well, inshallah, as well as the latest tutorial from last week. Yeah, next Tuesday, that's the Sisters in Sustainability event. And next week, Friday, we'll have the Linux and GitHub tutorial, inshallah. Okay, and that's everything. Thank you, everybody, for coming. Jazakallah khair.